The next side I want to tackle as part of my team previews ahead of the Overwatch League 2020 season is the Atlanta Reign. After coming off an impressive first year in the league, they are being pegged as one of the most promising and strongest squads ahead of next season, so I guess the question is, should we buy into the hype? Atlanta are the first team I've covered that wasn't part of the league in 2018 for the inaugural season. Instead, they were one of the 8 expansions we saw enter in 2019. When you reflect on last season, on the whole most of the expansion squads actually performed really well, but the Reign alongside the Spark and the Titans were certainly one of the standout performers. They attracted a lot of attention and fans even before the season started when they announced they had signed the extremely popular player and streamer Defran, and around and the rest of the players looked to have plenty of promise and potential. Stage 1 went well for Atlanta, finishing 4-3, which secured them a playoff spot, where in the quarterfinals they would fall just short in a very competitive contest to the Philadelphia Fusion. It had definitely been a solid start for this new team, still settling into the league, but Stage 2 would be much bumpier and a far more confusing ride. Defran announced after their playoff exit that he'd be transitioning out of the starting lineup to return to streaming, and in his place the team brought in Baby from the Shock. This is where things got a bit strange though. Despite defeating the New York Excelsior not once but twice that stage, the Reign would fail to play up to the same level against weaker opponents like Boston and the Valiant, with defeats against these two leaving them with a 3-4 record by the end of the stage. Stage 3 on paper seemed to be their lowest point in 2019, as they finished 2-5, with their only wins coming at its conclusion during their homestand weekend. But upon closer inspection, this period proved to be the Reign's toughest stretch of fixtures, and Stage 4 would highlight that they were a much stronger side than their record indicated. They finished with a brilliant 7-0 record, only matched by the San Francisco Shock, which secured them an automatic playoff berth, and indeed a first round match against the Shock in the playoffs. In their biggest moment, they would come out triumphant in an amazing 4-3 series win against the eventual champions, which proved at their best this Atlanta side could beat anyone. The party soon ended, however, as despite having a really high ceiling, the 2019 regular season showed that this team was very streaky and easily affected by their emotions, both positively and negatively. And this is what led to their playoff exit, with a close loss to New York before disappointingly being swept 4-0 by the Spark. As I've laid out, the Reign's 2019 roster had the potential and ability to rival even the best teams in the league last season. Too often, however, they would let emotion and poor performances hold them back from consistently showing off their true quality. So let's see what they've done in terms of their squad this off-season to try and more consistently compete. Starting at DPS, Erster and Baby remain with the side whilst Enlayer has been released. To fill the available spaces though, Atlanta have made headlines with the highly rated contenders DPS acquisitions of Edison from GC Busan and Sharp from Team Envy. Tank sees the Reign's only other departure, with Dako leaving the team, whereas both Pokpo and FRD remain. Emmy's vacancies, the team has looked inward to their academy team, the Atlanta Academy, which impressed hugely in contenders throughout 2019, and from them, they've promoted the tank duo of Gator and Hawk. Interestingly, whilst additions have been made at both DPS and tank positions, the Reign hadn't seen the need to make any changes at support at this moment in time, with Massa and Dogman remaining their only players at this position. Whereas both the Gladiators and Uprising have made wholesale changes to their lineups ahead of the 2020 season, Atlanta have kept most of their players from last year and have made only a few changes, which immediately should help them in regards to team chemistry and coordination. Taking a more detailed look at their DPS position group first, the release of Enlayer is sad to see, given how he was a consistent contributor to the side last year when called upon, and during the World Cup he looked to be really coming out of his shell with some impressive displays. That said, given the 2 pickups they've made, this decision is understandable. Edison is a player that you've probably heard being talked up often if you've been following the Overwatch League off-season news and discussion, and just by watching his highlights you can see why that is. It's important not to be dissuaded by the results of his former team GC Busan, but for the last year has consistently stayed in the middle of the Korean pack, as Edison seriously looks to be the real deal, with fantastic mechanics and top quality on a number of heroes at the DPS position. And picturing him in a DPS duo alongside Erster just makes you wonder what a deadly pairing they could prove to be if they play at their very best. Of course, it's equally important that we don't get too ahead of ourselves, as similar comments can be said of other contenders players that are entering the league next season, before we've even seen them on stage. But Edison is one player that I'm expecting to hit the ground running. Coming back to their DPS pairing I suggested earlier, it should come as no surprise that Erster is returning after his excellent 2019 campaign. He was a key player to the Reign all season, but in Stage 4 particularly, he was exceptional, helping Atlanta to a brilliant 7-0 stage on the back of numerous brilliant performances that made him one of, if not the best players in the league at that time. When 2-2-2 came into effect, Erster was able to unleash his full potential, but had certainly been restrained in the GOATS meta, and now with him being free to utilise the full talents of his DPS hero pool over the course of 2020, he could seriously put himself in the MVP conversation if he can perform to a similar or even better level. Erster and Edison may stand out at the forefront of Atlanta's DPS cohort, but you would be mistaken for ignoring the 2 other players who are on the team beside them. Sharp is another new player joining the team, and his potential and quality at the DPS position is nothing to be sniffed at either. He has impressed many with his performances on Team Envy across many hitscan heroes, and for a long time now has been tipped as a future star. It's only a matter of time before he highlights this on the Overwatch League stage, when he gets his opportunity with the Reign. Lastly, there's Baby, who I'm sure will go under the radar compared to the other DPS options, but he is someone who shouldn't be at all discounted though in my opinion. His experience will I'm sure prove invaluable to the side, but considering the considerable improvement we saw from him after leaving the San Francisco Shock last season, when many, including myself, perhaps thought he had little more to offer, suggests that if called upon, that he can deliver. Taking the 4 DPS players as a whole though, this looks to be one of the most stacked position groups in the entire league, that on paper would be able to perform at a high level in any meta. It will be interesting to see how each of these players is utilised, whether Atlanta runs a rotation, or instead if certain players specialise on certain heroes. Either way, I expect them to be at the forefront of a consistent challenge on the Reign this season, which should excite many of their fans. Moving on to the tank position, this is perhaps where the greatest questions of the Atlanta challenge can be asked, following the departure of one of their strongest 2019 performers, in Dako. Whilst he started far less towards the end of last season, during the first 3 stages, he undoubtedly was one of the Reign's most consistent and impactful performers on D.Va, with his performances being fundamental in the team's 2 amazing victories over New York. If rumours are to be believed though, he wasn't a great contributor behind the scenes, and with him being utilised less as the season came to a close, perhaps his departure is one the team will take more positives from than negatives. One such positive being the performances of FRD, who was one of the surprises of Stage 4, with a number of really strong displays when Atlanta are playing at their best. His D.Va looked vastly improved, and his Hulk was definitely a highlight. His return looks to be a welcome one, and if he can muster a similar level of form, then the loss of Dako won't be felt as significantly. Alongside him, Pokpo is another who has remained, and I think this low-key is an excellent decision by Atlanta. At the main tank position, Pokpo kind of flew under the radar throughout the season, as he didn't make too many flashy plays compared to some of his peers. However, he was certainly consistent throughout, and provided a solid foundation for the whole season, which I think can't be underestimated, with his play proving valuable to allow other players like Ursa and Dogman to pop off around him. Joining these two though are the former tank duo from the Reign's Academy team, Gator and Hawk. Gator already spent a short time with Atlanta at the end of 2019 and during their playoff run, showcasing an excellent Sigma, which arguably could be considered one of the strongest shown during the playoffs, so his promotion comes as no surprise given the impact he had in such a short time with the team already. This pair has been really good in contenders on clearly the best Western Tier 2 side of 2019, and I'm sure his experience and synergy will help them in the transition to the Overwatch League. I've seen a few people being critical about Hawk's overall ability, but whilst I think he's going to be fine, we'll have to wait and see till he plays his first match before we can be confident either way. As a collective, whilst perhaps not the strongest part of Atlanta's roster, I think there are a lot of positives we can draw from their tank group, with their depth and potential being certainly something which could elevate the Reign in 2020. Although depending upon the meta, these are the players I'd keep the closest eye on in regards to whether the Reign can mount a serious challenge this season, or if they'll be stuck in the middle of the pack. Lastly, the support role is an interesting one, as it's the first I've covered that features really no changes at all, with the duo of Massa and Dogman returning. What I found interesting is how these two players were received and rated throughout 2019, with there being certainly quite a variance in opinion. Starting with Massa, I've been surprised to see that some didn't think that highly of his Lucio last season, which I'd have to certainly contest. Massa in my mind was one of the top performing main supports in 2019, with consistently impactful frontline boots and well-timed ultimates, which certainly contributed significantly to the team's success. As for Dogman, he seemed to suffer similar criticism to Bumper, in the sense that people just looked at his death statistics, drawing the conclusion he was just playing over aggressively and feeding. Yet when you actually rewatch his play however, you realise that more often than not, his deaths followed the highly impactful plays, where through getting early kills, or through pressure, he was able to put the team in a much better position to succeed, which I think shouldn't be overlooked or misinterpreted, as in my opinion he's a much better player than he's often ranked at. I would say though, he is more of an emotional player, and for the most part, whilst I think this emotion is generally quite good for the team, it's something worth keeping an eye on as the season progresses. As a duo, I'm expecting Massa and Dogman to perform well this season and build upon what was a good start last year. Perhaps some depth or backup wouldn't be the worst idea in the world given the unknowns of the global schedule, but I imagine that's something the team have already considered. Bringing it all to a conclusion though, the Atlanta Reign in my eyes look to be in a really strong position heading into the 2020 Overwatch League season. The DPS position group has the potential to be one of the strongest in the league, and whilst there are potentially a couple of pitfalls at tank and support, both of these roles seem to have really solid foundations in place that could see their players playing at an even higher level than what they displayed in 2019. I would be wrong to ignore the possibility that Atlanta may start the season with a couple of growing pains as their new pieces fit in and gain experience, but if all 3 areas of their roster play to their potential and improve upon the displays they showed towards the latter end of last season, then without a doubt, the Reign can be considered a team that could make waves through far more consistent quality displays. In my mind, they're not only a good bet for the playoffs, but perhaps even an outside challenger to win it all, but should similar emotional demons return from 2019, then they may end up repeating what they showed throughout last season. This would be such a shame, and would certainly be a disservice to the genuine quality and potential across this team, as I believe they can and should be competing with the very best, but we'll have to wait and see if this Phoenix truly flies to the height it is capable of reaching. That's all I have to say though for now on the Atlanta Reign ahead of the 2020 Overwatch League season, and if you have reached the end of this video, then I'd like to thank you for watching. This week looks to be a busy one in terms of my upcoming content, so if you have enjoyed, then please be sure to like, subscribe and follow me on my Twitter or Discord so you don't miss out. And I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.